The Congress party and as well as the communist leaders, they have been very much responsible for providing fuel to such devious political designs since a long time now. They are always at the forefront of accusing the common Assamese people of xenophobia and therefore repeatedly targeting one particular religious community, that is the Muslims, in the name of protecting their identity. And no wonder this particular incident at Gurukul caught the headlines in international news networks like Al Jazeera TV and Pakistan's Dawn immediately when it happened. And Pakistan even summoned an Indian diplomat to its foreign office and conveyed its concern over the Gurukul eviction drive, alleging that the Muslims have been targeted in the state. And he was told that India must investigate the recent anti-Muslim violence in Assam and the perpetrators be punished immediately. Besides undertaking, he was also asked to undertake several measures to stop such incidents from recurring in the near future.
Hello, good evening, namaste, and welcome to Citti Media. My name is Citti, your host. Today, we will be discussing the issue of illegal immigration and land encroachment in Assam. This is an issue that has been going on since the time of Indian independence, and even with the liberation of East Pakistan, or as we call it, Bangladesh today, this problem doesn't seem to have an end. To discuss this, today we are joined by Dr. Ankita Dutta. Dr. Ankita Dutta, thank you so much for joining us today. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much for inviting me to your platform. Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure to have you here again.
Thank you.
And on that note, let me ask you my first question. Ankita ji, let's talk about the recent political developments in Assam right now. There are a lot of eviction drives that are happening, especially at Gurukul, within the larger context of the twin problems. And these problems are A, illegal immigrants and infiltration into Assam, and B, there is a huge issue of land encroachment. So could you tell our viewers and give an overview of what the problem is all about?
Yes, yeah, coming directly to the point, actually, the recent eviction which was carried out by the government of Assam at number 3 Dholpur village called Gorukuti under Sipajar Revenue Circle, it is near Mongoldoi in Dorong district of Lower Assam, and the events that followed in its aftermath, including the firing on police personnel. This is just another, what I would say, another dreadful manifestation of a problem that has been plaguing Assam since the pre-independence era. It is a part of the larger conspiracy of making Assam an Islamic State, often quoted as the policy of Levinsdom by several Bangladeshi academics and political leaders on several occasions in the past. And in the post-independence era, this thought process has received academic and moral support from an entire network of self-proclaimed intellectuals within quotes, journalists, writers, public speakers, and a few lawyers and human rights activists as well. They just stubbornly refuse to acknowledge the bitter reality that Assam has been witnessing a slow and silent demographic invasion by hordes of land hungry Muslims from erstwhile East Bengal, erstwhile East Pakistan, and present day Bangladesh. And this has been taking place since the time Lord Curzon had clubbed Assam with Eastern Bengal to create a new province in 1905. And although that decision was revoked in 1911, the floodgates have remained open for more than a century now. The Congress party and as well as the communist leaders, they have been very much responsible for providing fuel to such devious political designs since a long time now. They are always at the forefront of accusing the common Assamese people of xenophobia and therefore repeatedly targeting one particular religious community, that is the Muslims, in the name of protecting their identity. And no wonder this particular incident at Gurukul caught the headlines in international news networks like Al Jazeera TV and Pakistan's Dawn immediately when it happened. And Pakistan even summoned an Indian diplomat to its foreign office and conveyed its concern over the Gurukul eviction drive, alleging that the Muslims have been targeted in the state. And he was told that India must investigate the recent anti-Muslim violence in Assam and the perpetrators be punished immediately. Besides undertaking, he was also asked to undertake several measures to stop such incidents from recurring in the near future. So, I mean, these are, this is a question. Are these again fresh ammunitions to malign India again and accuse the people of Assam in particular of xenophobia in the international platform? Most importantly, the incident that took place at Gorukuti on the 23rd of September 2021, it again drew our attention to the issue of land, which is the primary target of the encroachers of dubious
Right.
nationality. And it was a long pending demand of various organizations in Assam as well, including the All Assam Students Union, ASU, to clear the large scale land encroachments that have been taking place in the nearby areas like Kurua, Fuhuratoli, Dholpur under the Sipajhar Revenue Circle in Dorong district. The
Right.
situation of the locals here, it is too despicable to be even described. Dacoities, robberies, rapes and molestations of Hindu girls in broad daylight and various other such antisocial activities, they have become so commonplace in these areas. And it was in this context that, keeping in mind the safety and security of the female school teachers working in the Muslim dominated areas of Assam, Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma, as the education minister in the cabinet of former Chief Minister Sarbananda Sonowal, he had to personally intervene in this matter, and he had passed an order that allowed for the immediate transfer of these teachers to schools in the to schools in non-Muslim areas. And I think
Right.
anyone can gauge the extent of this problem by with respect to such a decision that was being made. Yes.
Right. And Dr. Datta, there is a famous Shiv Mandir near Gorukuti
Hmm.
where the eviction took place. It is said that the lands actually belong to this mandir were also encroached upon by the infiltrators. Can you tell us the chronology of the events that had taken place there?
Yeah, in fact, this district where the eviction took place, Dorong district in Assam, it boasts of a rich Sanatan past, sharing an
Right.
ancient relationship with Hindu rishis like Agastya Rishi, Atri, Yagyabalka, etc. Its people have fearlessly, they have always stood up for the protection of their rights. And we must not forget that it was from the Mongoldoy Lok Sabha constituency in this same Dorong district that the Assam agitation had started in 1979 against the influx of illegal Bangladeshi immigrants into Assam. Now, coming to Dholpur, where the eviction took place, Dholpur is a riverine area with an approximately 25,000 acres of land. It is sandwiched between two streams of the Brahmaputra and comprising of several villages such as Puhratoli, Dholpur, Kurua, Kholihoi, and Baznapathar. But Dholpur has been at the center of several conflicts since the 1980s. Coming to the Shiv Mandir, it is a 5,000-year-old Shiv Mandir that is situated atop the nearby scenic Dholpur hill in the middle of the Brahmaputra. It is believed that the mandir was built during the 4th century by people belonging to the Nath Yogi and Kirat communities. The structure of the mandir was destroyed in the 14th century because of a natural calamity. According to historians, it was after this event that the Ahom kings began looking after this mandir for a long period of time. And later, other Nepali kings and a few kings of the Koch Rajbongshi kingdom as well, they were great devotees of this mandir. The Dholpur Shiv Mandir, it is one of the primary religious destinations of Hindus in Dorong district. The relics that can be seen in the mandir, they include various beautiful designs of stone architecture in the pillars and the basement, floral and animal motifs, brick walls, etc. The stone remnants of Dholpur, they could be dated between the 8th to 9th centuries AD, and the brick remains are assigned to the period between the 17th to 18th centuries AD. Land belonging to the
Right.
Dholpur Shiv Mandir has also been encroached upon by the infiltrators. And during the recent eviction drive, 4 illegally constructed masjids were also destroyed in this place. The mandir is now under tight security arrangements due to the frequent eviction drives that have been taking place in this area since the coming to power of Chief Minister Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma. Going back to history, it began during the late 1970s actually, when many Bengali speaking Muslim families, they had migrated from Nagaon district in central Assam and settled in different areas of Dorong district, including Dholpur and Sipajhar, through land encroachment. Till 1979, there were only 37 such families who migrated from Nagaon. But by the end of 1981, several hundreds of families were settled in Dholpur by the then Congress governments at both the state and the center through different ways of land encroachment and, of course, political patronage. Their first target was the age-old Dholpur Shiv Mandir and its land. 180 bighas of land that belonged to this mandir were initially encroached upon, and later the entire area, which amounts to more than 77,000 bighas of land, was encroached by thousands of families who were suspected to have migrated from outside the country. At first, the big trees inside the mandir complex, they were cut down and felled, and all valuables belonging to the mandir were looted by miscreants. Till 1979, the plain areas of the Dholpur hills, they happened to be the farmlands of people, mostly Assamese and Nepali Hindus, and hundreds of them, including their families, operated their dairy farms. They made use of their earnings from their dairy related activities to take care of the daily expenses of the Shiv Mandir. And therefore, this area is popularly known as Gurukul, literally meaning cow farm in English, Gurukul.
Right.
Now, at the peak of the Assam agitation in 1983, at this time, Assam was burning day in and day out against the issue of infiltration from Bangladesh. Former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi visited this area where the eviction took place, and she expressed her solidarity with the illegal settlers. She arrived in Assam for a 3-day tour to inspect the refugee camps and also addressed a rally at a place called Saulkhua Sapori, which is adjacent to this Dholpur Shiv Mandir. And she later handed over tin sheets for the construction of houses, blankets, food, and other relief material to people who had come from various areas in Assam to settle at Dholpur.
Right.
It was on the 15th of February 1983 that the encroachers brutally killed several local Hindus of the area for protesting against the occupation of their lands by illegal intruders in and around Dholpur and Rangamati areas, causing massive outrage. A very important event which many people do not know, or they are not being let known about these facts. The head pujari of the Shiv Mandir, Shiva Das, he was killed by unknown assailants. Another pujari, Kartik Das, he escaped to a nearby village to save his life and property. The pujari who was dead, the deceased pujari, Shiva Das, he was declared as one among the 855 martyrs of the 6-year-long Assam agitation. Shockingly, in a very shocking incident, after the demise of Kartik Das, the other pujari, in the year 2011, he died in 2011, his widowed wife was forced to marry a Muslim man, and she and all her 3 children were soon converted into Islam. So the threats that are being continuously posed to the lives, livelihoods, and properties of the non-Muslims in Muslim-dominated areas, not just in Assam, but across the entire world, they do not require any further elaboration. And years later, these very Muslim settlers in Dholpur Gurukul encroached upon the lands of the native inhabitants and began occupying more and more farming land that was owned by the locals, but who did not necessarily reside in the vicinity. And 10 years later, after this incident in 1993, the Congress government allotted 5 bighas of land each to 199 Bengali Muslim families in Puhuratuli. But the very next year, that is in 1994, this was found to be illegal as the area happened to be a VGR or Village Grazing Reserve. Right. Although eviction orders were issued, but no serious action was taken, and the illegal settlers continued to thrive all these years. In 2013, it was found through an RTI application that almost 77,420 bighas of government land had been encroached upon in this area. And 2 years later, in February 2015, the president of Dakshin Mongoldoy Gwala Sanstha had filed a case under the Assam Land Grabbing Prohibition Act of 2010 in the Mongoldoy District Court, seeking the immediate eviction of illegal occupants from the 77,420 bighas of land. Then it was in 2017, one Ananda Das of Kurua village. He was murdered by suspected illegal infiltrators and land encroachers. This gruesome episode ended with the eviction of 60 families from the area. In 2020, another person named Lalit Das of Kurwa village went missing. It was later claimed by the locals that he had been killed by the illegal encroachers. Then in June 2021, 49 families were evicted by the district administration to clear 180 bighas of land claimed by the committee in charge of the management of the Dholpur Shiv Mandir. But locals claim that the evicted families returned to the same place soon after. But since its very first term in 2016, the ruling BJP government has pledged to remove encroachers from government lands and lands belonging to Hindu religious institutions. It formed the basis of the BJP's 2021 poll promise as well. The previous BJP government under former Chief Minister Shri Sarbananda Sonowal ji had carried out eviction drives to remove squatter settlements from the Kaziranga National Park as well, and also from those lands belonging to the Botadroba Than, which is the birthplace of Mahapurush Himanta Shankardev. And earlier this year, Assam Chief Minister Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma had announced that government lands all over the state would be freed from encroachment. And over 400 bighas or roughly 132 acres of encroached land have already been freed in Hojai, Karimganj and Dorong districts. I mean, the real problem of encroachment of government land started assuming serious proportions since 1971. And the unabated flow of infiltrators from Bangladesh is one of the root causes of this problem. Land is the most valuable and prized possession for these infiltrators, and many a times it is also noticed that they are even ready to die than losing their land. I mean, the brutal attack on the state police forces by a mob of protesters using sharp weapons, sticks, and machetes during the Dholpur evictions is a case in point. They pelted stones at the police and began to attack them. And the common people who were present at the spot at that time were also attacked. It eventually resulted in 11 policemen and a few civilians too being critically injured. So this is the story actually.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Datta. In fact, this is such a surprise and a shock to many outside of Assam and many who are not aware of the particular angle that you've just described, because Prime Minister Indira Gandhi used illegal immigration as a pretext to liberate Bangladesh. I mean, that was the front and the reason with which we actually went into East Pakistan. And in fact, there is a much more sinister pattern that emerges post 1971. And this is something that has not been spoken about enough in our history. Dr. Datta, my question to you is, what role do you see the PFI playing in the entire incident? And if I'm not mistaken, even Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma has spoken about this earlier.
Yes. Yeah, actually, because certain shocking revelations later came to light after the Gurukul eviction drive that pointed fingers at the role of the PFI, the Popular Front of India, behind instigating the encroachers to fire at the police. And CM Himanta Biswa Sharma himself said that the situation at Dholpur turned hostile because of the presence of a third force. Now, who was this third force? A team of the Popular Front of India, PFI, as it was also reported in several newspapers, including the Assam Tribune. A team of the PFI had visited the area a day before the incident on the pretext of distributing food items. The Chief Minister also said that at least 6 persons had together collected rupees 28 lakhs from the encroachers at Gurukul in Dholpur on the ground of stopping the eviction. Now, earlier, the state government had sent a dossier to the center seeking an immediate ban on the PFI, especially after its activists were arrested during the CAA agitation in Assam. The landless people in Gurukul, they were promised 6 bighas of land as per the state's land policy, and they had also eagerly they assured to vacate the encroached land, and they had come into a certain sort of understanding with the district administration, and the eviction went off peacefully on the first day. But it was on the second day that people from other nearby districts had also gathered in the area, and instigated by some outside forces, as explained by the Chief Minister, a violent clash erupted. Only 60 families were left to be evicted on the second day. But all of a sudden, around 1,000 protesters, they suddenly surfaced with weapons and began attacking the security forces. And this kind of attack by such encroachers is a common sight nowadays in Assam. It proves the point that the violence which occurred at Gorukuti was not a one-way traffic, but there were many fringe elements
Right.
and organizations involved which instigated the encroachers, who were given multiple notices beforehand. The security forces had no choice left. Earlier, when eviction operations were undertaken against indigenous people who were mostly non-Muslims in places like Amchang and other places like Laika Dodhia, big buildings and structures were destroyed and occupants were evicted. But there was no violence. Even though the evicted people in these places like Amchang, they were not given any alternative sites of settlement. But in the case of Gorukuti, the encroachers had already been shown an alternative site for relocation. But despite all of that,
Right.
they resorted to violence. The protesters were demanding rehabilitation of nearly 800 families were evicted by the administration from the nearby areas. The evicted families, they also demanded that further eviction be stopped in other areas of the state and they be provided with a comprehensive rehabilitation package. And later, several Muslim organizations, including the All Assam Minority Students Union or AMSU, then the Sankhya Laghu Sangram Parishad, besides the Congress Party, demanded rehabilitation and other essential support services to the evicted people. A few members of the Congress Party even termed the police firing during the evictions as a barbaric and inhuman act. Then Twitter threads of Assam horror, Hindutva state terror immediately started doing the rounds in social media while the eviction drive was still going on. Maulana Badruddin Ajmal's AIUDF, All India United Democratic Front, even went on to allege that Chief Minister Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma is trying to convert Assam into a police state. The left parties also condemned the incident of police firing on the protesters to divert people's attention away from the fact that the encroachers were actually the ones who targeted the police in the first place. And it was only in self-defense that the police opened fire. The All India Kisan Sabha, AIKS, it went a step further and demanded immediate dismissal of the state government and resignation of
Right.
Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma, who also holds the home portfolio.
Right. Very interesting. I mean, it comes barely as a surprise that these parties are demanding for that. But that apart, from what you say, Dr. Datta, it is very evident that Assam is going through a severe identity crisis. If I'm sure you agree with me. And
Yeah,
these
definitely.
stem from two problems that you primarily point to. One is land grabbing, and the other one is the illegal infiltration by these people. How best can we identify a solution, and what is the solution going forward? What can the government do?
Yeah, actually, very true. I completely agree with you because Assam's fight today is equally against the encroachers as much as it is against their patronizers. And these patronizers are the people who are occupying some top posts in the bureaucracy, in the academia, in think tanks, in politics, etc. And they are adept at the art of crafting an anti-Hindu narrative and the propaganda of Muslim victimhood politics every time an eviction drive takes place. So, what recently happened at Gorukuti was nothing but only a small glimpse of the growing political and financial influence of the infiltrators or encroachers. Land is their primary target and will continue to remain ever so. The BJP-led alliance, it has vowed to protect the Jati, Mati and Bheti. Jati means community, Mati means land and Bheti means home of the Assamese people. But the
Right.
infiltrators are hell-bent on wiping out all traces of the same Jati, Mati, Bheti every single day. Uh, One advocate of the Supreme Court of India, Upamanyu Hazarika, he had earlier informed that there exist a few villages in the same Dorong district of Lower Assam where immigrants not only outnumber the natives, but the natives, they have been actually pushed into ghetto like dwellings in their own ancestral abode, and the ramifications of this unabated infiltration of people have now come to severely bear upon the vital statistics of the state in terms of basic self-sufficient sustenance. The crime patterns in many places have vastly changed. Forced abductions and conversion of Hindu girls and even married Hindu women into Islam have become a routine problem. And it would perhaps not be an exaggeration to say that not a single Hindu mandir, especially in districts like Dhubri and Borpeta, the districts which share a border with Bangladesh, has been spared by thieves and burglars. So, accordingly, the trend of democratic politics has also changed in Assam over the years. I mean, going back to history, the unfulfilled dream of people like Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Moinul Haq Chaudhary and the entire Muslim League to include Assam in Bangladesh is continuously being pursued. Therefore, issues related to land have always been complex affairs. And this is especially true in a state like Assam, where demographic change over the past several decades has been mostly artificially engineered. The modus operandi of the infiltrators is to grab the land of the native residents of the area by whatever means they can apply. And in many instances, they also try to legally possess cultivable land. The process of completely evicting the illegal infiltrators from their lands is long term, because these are mostly government lands where they have encroached, or lands which have been procured through land mafias who force the owners of these lands to sell them at throwaway prices. In the recent incident at Gurukul, the police perhaps believed that the migrants would be deterred by the show of force and were therefore unprepared for the kind of mob reprisal which actually took place that day. But could the district administration really would have been able to avert the whole imbroglio? That is the question. Had they been better prepared for it? Because several episodes in the socio-political history of Assam in the past, they are proof enough of the fact that these encroachers are not the ones who would give up their landholding so easily.
Right.
And land encroachment by illegal settlers, it has now become a question of existential survival for the common Assamese people. The Assam movement, the Brahma Committee report on land rights that we have, Upamanyu Hazarika's one-man commission on border sealing, the National Register of Citizens, NRC, the anti-CA movement, and most recently, the Clause 6 recommendations of the Assam Accord of 1985, they all had the immigration issue as a contributory factor at the very least. The Upamanyu Hazarika Commission report even mentioned that illegal immigration from Bangladesh is threatening to reduce the indigenous population of Assam to a minority in their own homeland by the year 2047. Then former Chief Election Commissioner H.S. Brahma, who headed the Committee for the Protection of Land Rights of Indigenous People that was constituted by the Sarbanandu Sonowal government in 2016, it had submitted a report to the government of Assam which gave a detailed account of the problem of land encroachment in the state. And in its report, the committee gave a series of recommendations on amending the land laws. It had estimated that around 63 lakh bighas of government land was under illegal occupation in Assam. And this is an area twice the size of Goa, as mentioned in the report. And as per this report, the total area encroached upon includes 3,172 square kilometers of forested lands, besides the huge tracts of land belonging to the Vaishnavite satras, namghars, and mandirs that have been encroached by infiltrators. And it also mentioned that the people of Assam, as you have also already said, they are facing a serious crisis of identity as their land has been encroached upon. The report specifically observed that in case no effective constitutional, legal, and administrative steps, including sealing of the Indo-Bangladesh border and detection and deportation of the illegal infiltrators are taken, unless these steps are taken, the indigenous people of Assam are bound to be reduced to a landless class of people and become foreigners in their own homes. And this report also pointed out one very important fact, that all lands in the riverine areas or the char areas of Assam are settled by a well-established institution known as the Matabbar or Diwani. And for all practical purposes, this Matabbar or Diwani plays the role of the government. It makes out allotments of land to the Muslims. They are landlords with sprawling estates wielding tremendous political and financial clout, which dissuades others from actually raising a voice against them. The socio-political and economic lives of the people of the state have been affected in many different and complex ways because of such land grabbing. And politically motivated narratives such as religious intolerance, violation of human rights, discrimination against Muslims, etc., they have been deliberately woven in order to hide the real problem that no longer can be understood simply as a Hindu-Muslim concern. It has more to do with the land rights of the common people of Assam and the constant threat posed to their lives and livelihoods by the infiltrators. So,
Right.
eviction drives in Assam have to be a continuous process in the larger interest of freeing the local people's lands and government lands, which have been forcefully occupied by the illegal Bangladeshis for several years now. And at a time when the issue of migration has challenged uh, global political systems in the West, not expecting a popular reaction from the common people of Assam is too naive, actually, because in a state like Assam, almost one third of the population has become that of migrants. And there has been a disproportionate increase, I would say, in the Muslim population of Assam over the past few decades. And the demographic change is starkly visible. So, this brings us to the last question: what can be a permanent and long term solution to the problem of land encroachment by infiltrators in Assam? So, what we need to accept here is that over the years, the problem of encroachment of government lands in several areas of Assam never fell in the government's priority list, actually, of the previous governments. And till date, a thorough survey of the people in districts like Dhubri, South Salmara, Mankachar, Borpeta, Gwalpara, which share a border with Bangladesh, including Nagaon district in central Assam, etc., uh, a thorough survey of the people in these districts who became landless due to Islamic demographic invasion has not been carried out. So this has only expanded this problem because it has left enough space for the encroachers to claim that they are erosion hit people. And one of the possible solutions to this problem can be that the state government can carry out a thorough survey of all the landless people in the state and allot small plots of land to them. And after this is done, there must be strict vigilance and no one should be allowed to encroach upon government lands, because it is seen that those evicted usually
Right.
encroach upon lands elsewhere again very soon. So undoubtedly, large scale encroachment of government lands, including forest lands, could not have been possible in the past without political patronage. The situation is dangerous all over the state, particularly in 8 to 10 districts of Lower Assam. And as per the census data of 2011, 2021 is still not out. As per the census data of 2011, districts like Borpeta, Bongaigaon, Dorong, Dhubri, Gwalpara, Hailakandi, Karimganj, Morigaon, Nagaon, they have been most seriously affected because of the demographic change. And these are also the districts which have contributed in a large measure to the changing religious demographic pattern of Assam. So the recent incident at Gorukuti and the Sipaja revenue circle in Dorong district of Lower Assam and the subsequent events that unfolded as I have described, it has once again demonstrated that there is just no alternative to a protective legislation for safeguarding the land and livelihood rights of the common people of Assam. Because if a protective legislation reserving land for the native people is put in place, then those of Bangladeshi origin would no longer be able to acquire permanent rights over land. And detailed recommendations in this regard have been given by the committee constituted under Clause 6 of the Assam Accord by the central government, because it has recommended reservation of land, employment, and trade based on an NRC that is carried out with 1951 and not 1971 as the base year. Encroachment is an offense under the Assam Land Grabbing Act of 2010 with a maximum punishment of 5 years. And over and above this, when encroachers attack police personnel undertaking eviction operations, it constitutes yet another offense.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ankita Dutta, for joining us today and giving us such clarity about what is happening in Assam. And this is definitely a disturbing development, and it's a very unfortunate situation that we haven't been able to address since the last 4 or 5 decades. Now, things do seem a little promising with the BJP government in Assam under the leadership of Dr. Himanta Biswa Sarma, but one can only wait and watch what will unfold. And I hope you can join us again for a conversation as events unfold in Assam. And thank you so much for taking your time out today. And namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
And to all our viewers, please do like, share, and subscribe to Citti Media and the Festival of Bharat. We will be bringing you more updates on this issue very soon. Until then, this is your host Sharan Citti signing off.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.